Right, look, let's jump straight in. So, the reason why I wanted to talk to you was that you've got a very specific, consistent illustration style,
Hmm.
which I know that you've had for a number of years, even going before uni.
Yeah.
So we should probably start with where that first sparked, probably.
Okay. Yeah. So I think prior when we spoke, in sixth form, I think that's where I really started to develop this illustration style of
Mm,
just it just came from doodling all the time, just doodling nonstop. But then I never really applied it into my sixth form work
mhm,
until the last brief that we had to do, and it was like again like help make a clothing brand for yourself, like work on that. And obviously
mhm,
that's where I was like, let me just do what I want to do. But before that I used to do like realism and stuff like that,
mhm,
completely different. And it wasn't until so that was like a little introduction to it. And then when I went to my foundation year,
mhm.
that's when the FMP that I took, that's where I really like found the work that I really enjoy doing, and like all of the influences and like people that inspire me today. That's where I kind of got a lot of my work.
Because you've told me that you've had a really good relationship with your tutor in
Yeah,
foundation, who,
yeah, Jake.
because you brought him up a lot at uni.
Mm,
Did he so when you went in, obviously you had your style, you started it, and obviously you go into foundation, you try out all these different skills. Did he kind of go to you and be like, "There's something here"?
I think what it was, I wouldn't say I had a style in sixth form. It was more like I had a like you can tell with like certain type of work it's quite identifiable, and I had a
Mhm,
way of drawing something.
mhm, mhm,
And then it wasn't until foundation where, although like it first started off with like experimenting a lot, and
mhm,
then it went into where we had our specialization. So I went into viscom.
mhm,
So the projects we were doing there, that's where I started to be a bit more doing more illustrations that I do now, but it wasn't to the level that I
no,
am now, obviously. But the FMP, that's where you start showing me a ton of work, and then I start using like folk art as like an influence, as
mhm,
well as like also understanding contemporary illustration and like looking at all of these things. And then that's where I started to build like a strong identity for my work, and
sure,
like the color theory and stuff, like learning about that a lot more,
mhm,
developing on that. And then I'd say because of the FMP, I remember just talking to him once, and he was like, you know, just be consistent with these type of illustrations and
mhm,
drawings.
mhm,
Just, then that's where I just bought a sketchbook, and then just when in that summer I started drawing a lot more.
mhm,
Because prior to that, I don't think I would doodle and stuff, but I didn't really sketch and like have that sketchbook with me all the time
mhm,
until I finished my foundation. And then that's where one piece that I think everyone can like, my connected
mhm.
illustrations in that summer, that's where I created that. And then I feel like that kind of gave me the strength to go into uni and stuff.
So yeah, move because yeah, that was I was going to bring up. So obviously you go from foundation, which we'll come back to. Um,
Mm,
you go into uni. You've had a summer of developing that identity that we go back to, um,
mm,
and obviously you do viscom or
yeah.
graphic design, visual communication with myself as well.
Mm,
You're clearly illustrating a lot and applying it, and obviously in those 3 years at uni,
yeah.
you spend those 2 years out of the three in viscom,
Hmm.
which you've done in your FMP from the foundation. So
Mm,
you pick up skills in graphic design that's probably implemented now into your illustration technique, but it's
yeah.
not changed a lot from then, possibly the way that you think, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. That's I'll say what was the question for it? Like
Well, so you go into uni straight out of
mm,
foundation. You've been, you've had a summer of sketching, and now you're going to a degree where you're doing graphic design. So where was the sort of, so where did you develop from there in terms of like stylistically, what happened, what was the journey sort of thing?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think you was there a lot. Again, just trying to build like a social profile as well, like
Hmm.
from Instagram, and didn't have an Instagram until like first year,
Hmm.
as well as the projects that we first started doing.
Hmm.
I like there was like these characters that I started to develop, and then there was like posters that were really strong, and then with some what is it called, projects that we were doing through uni, some were a bit limiting in the first year with like editorial,
Hmm.
but I kind of just kept going through it, and then yeah, and then in the last brief for first year, I remember making that little video, and that was pretty cool. I
Hmm.
remember we were just that's where you start to think about, oh, this could be animation and stuff. But then yeah, I think second year is where I started to realize a lot more about my illustration development. It's always been, for me, I feel like in the summer I always like just draw bare. I just draw so
Well,
much,
there's
and
no
then
limitations, is there, in the summer?
yeah,
So
yeah, and I think because obviously I have more time, so I
mhm.
was just working and like part time, but then also just like drawing in my spare time when I can.
Because that second
So,
year was obviously, it was a tough year for a
mm,
lot of us because we got thrown into the deep end, and it was a big step from that first year where you could easily apply the style. Although the briefs were limiting, you could apply the style that you'd obviously developed from the
yeah,
summer. Second year, we obviously got pushed to try different things out. So then
mm,
obviously maybe that gives you that chance. Maybe that was an opportunity for you to kind of sit there and go, I'm going to try these things. But you always came back to the same conclusion, I felt, where you sort of come to the end of the brief and say, right, I've done it, but I still enjoy that
mm,
original way of working and that original style that that you were strong at. But
mm,
maybe you took something out of that second year, possibly, that made you
yeah,
think in a different way,
yeah,
which then kind of develops onto the next point, which obviously probably the biggest step was that you kind of dropped graphics in the end of the second year.
yeah,
You took the skills forward and you had a conversation at the end of the year, and it was established that you would then transition over to illustration animation, which actually in our uni was not actually too much different in the way
yeah,
that they approach things. But obviously I think at that time it made total sense, and I think for you kind of knew that was the right thing to do. So what, sort of like, how was that transition? And obviously when you walked into that illustration studio for the first time, although we weren't at uni for the whole third year, what was that
yeah.
like? Do you know what I'm saying?
You know
What was
what?
that?
It was all right. I think it was a bit nerve wracking because what is it called? Didn't really, obviously knew people from illustration, but then there's other bunch of new people that you don't know too well.
Yeah.
And then because obviously throughout uni you kind of have your set groups that you're like, okay, I've built some sort of rapport with them, they're cool. And then when you go into illustration, it's like complete new people. I'm like,
It's a new
okay,
environment completely, isn't it? Because
yeah,
you have graphics where, I mean, I'm sure it's the same in illustration, but it felt like in graphics, although we had these little groups, but we all sort of did different things as well, and it was
mm,
well. That's something that I remember where someone was good at something that you weren't good at, or some,
mm,
that's quite a flat way to put it. But so when you went into illustration, going back to this idea of the style, you
mm.
went in and people had already seen your work already because there had been a number of shows or hand-ins, and so when you went in, was there a lot of people in there that had a clear style that you'd seen, or was there an idea that when you were amongst these illustrators, could you compare your not compare, but could you put yourself amongst that crowd and feel like you were comfortably within that bracket, sort of thing?
Yeah, I felt like in terms of style, there was quite a few people you could like they had very identifiable stuff.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of people were kind of also in the same boat of where although I felt like I had a strong style, I also saw like a lot of differences in the way I approached my illustrating. So
Mhm.
that's where I was like, do I have a style? And I was kind of like, I don't know if I do. But like when I got there, there was yeah, I feel like there was a lot of people I was in the same boat with where we're just trying to figure it out, and like
Mhm.
with each project, just like take on and try new things still, and like experiment and stuff.
So in that year, you obviously had the chance also to work in a collaborative project
Mhm.
these illustrators as well, which I guess was quite refreshing compared to probably the year before, which I remember we had a group project where you had graphic and illustration and you put them together, and it was quite tough to sort of try and find that common ground, because I still feel like as much as we were very close, it was
Mm.
the way that I think people wanted to attack the
Was that
project.
the publication?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel like, now you've transitioned over and you're amongst a crowd of people who you can probably relate to a little bit closer. Doing your working amongst these people must have kind of put you in a position where you probably developed a lot more as an illustrator a lot faster than you would have done had you maybe progressed into that final year as a graphic design student.
Yeah. Yeah, don't know. That was good because obviously everyone brought something completely new.
Mhm,
And like they like for example, we had Amy who done like printmaking and like was playing around with textures and painting and stuff. And then there's people that was good at like character design. And then, I think for me, because obviously I was director. Yeah, but I was like the one to try and like, build, put things together
mhm,
essentially.
mhm,
Everyone had like a strength, and I was like, okay, let's try to bring these in. And with the brief that they wanted us, and the idea that I gave to them, it was like, okay, let me try and merge all of these things. It wasn't easy. I can definitely say it was a learning experience for me, because there was times I was like, I felt a bit lost during it, but through it, I obviously found my feet and got more confident, and we ended up making something that was pretty good in my eyes.
You know what?
But
It's funny because you're talking about obviously that you were a director where you brought it together. I bet you
mm,
were in a position where it was quite nice actually for you to be in that position where you're actually watching these people bring their different styles of illustration and their different styles of working together, and you're starting to actually
yeah,
see the journey from that perspective, because it wasn't quite like that in graphics. We didn't really work as a group collectively apart from in our sort of little
I
groups that
think
we'd
in the
formed.
last year it helped with that last brief, but I
Mhm,
think in like the experience we had in second year, it was
mhm,
more so create what you want to make and we're gonna just put it together
mhm.
type thing.
Okay.
But I think that's something that it was like a gradual build, because later in second year we also had that quick workshop thing, which
Mhm,
was also quite fun. That was where we also worked with illustrators and our designers and stuff.
mhm. Um, so now coming to the end of your third year and final year, you produce a number of good things or whatever, and we obviously get it cut short because of lockdown, and you're working from home.
Mm.
Um, Stylistically, you're keeping it going. You're still developing and you're making the work. How different was it to then be put in a position where you're in like-minded people, like-minded creative people who are illustrating around you, to then you're cut off from everything, you're home,
Yeah.
and you're making your final project. So how was that?
Okay. Yeah, that was a bit difficult because obviously working from home, I think for everyone, like I hated working at home after. Like I didn't really have my own desk space, but I was
Mhm,
like, I had to like make do with what I had. But then obviously now I have.
mhm,
But yeah, that was difficult because also at that time I think I was hand drawing a lot. And then with this new project, I thought I was gonna have that like type of way of working.
mhm.
And also you don't have facilities. So
Of course.
that was kind of, you couldn't really like plan things into like see a final product type thing.
Mhm,
So I feel like that kind of was difficult in some ways, but yeah, it weren't easy, but we got through it. I think for that though, I did learn a lot. I got a lot of transferable stuff, like transferable skills, because I thought, let me just work digital now. Let me just I only have my Wacom board and my laptop. Let's just bang this out and do it. And to be fair, that me, myself, and I's projects, that is my favorite project,
mhm.
because now, like, from it, I just got bare digital stuff, and then I integrated some like texture and stuff, and it was
I was
just
going to say, because actually, when you were working from home and you had that last project, you were making noticeably stronger digital outcomes from
mm,
maybe what you had made in the previous years that I'd known you and doing things like that anyway. And obviously the style that you have, I know that you like drawing on paper, and it's the sort of, should we say, the old style illustration. But actually, yeah, I mean, that project that you brought up where it was digital, you were layering textures, and you could tell that you had sort of had a learning curve where you knew that maybe the facilities weren't there like you had at uni, and you had to sort of think in a way where, right, how is it going to work best for me at home to make a strong thing? And I think it worked out quite nicely. So, I mean, things like that, projects like that show that, you have a style, but you can keep kind of thinking in a different avenue maybe. And you probably, it's probably an eye opener actually, because when you left uni, I'm speaking to you now, I know that you still work digitally and you still developing those skills. So you can see that there's a clear journey from that summer, after the foundation course throughout, and now we're here. Aesthetically, maybe you're still keeping a similar style, but there's definitely been speed bumps and there's been avenues taken, which has led you to now making the projects that you could probably see now.
Yeah, 1000%. Hit now on the head there.
I was doing some research, and I found a quote in one of my books. It was about creative thinking, and it's from the main man Adrian Shaughnessy, who I read a lot on, and
I'll do my Googles.
And he said, for most creative people, a point is reached where they become so confident in their own abilities that their work becomes repetitive and predictable. Simple question, because obviously I'd say that you're very comfortable in the style that you are working in now, because it's been years in the making. Do you ever sort of think, how can I keep hitting this level so that when you're working with clients, let's say, and they see your portfolio, how do you know that you're keeping that high level of quality whilst making sure that you're still kind of being unpredictable and you're still kind of, keeping creative basically, and trying to make sure that it's not repetitive? Is that come across at all, or?
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that, if I'm being honest, because it's just, I don't even know. That's a really good question. I think it's a thing of with your style. I think no matter what, you're always gonna feel a bit like stagnant with it. But then, as an illustrator, I've realized like just doing something completely different and like being able to experiment and try new things is what's gonna always help you. Like always keep drawing, always like, you don't have to stick within this, identity that you've built for yourself. Like being able to just like want to draw and like just do complete different out of the box things. There's so much stuff now on YouTube and like other things that, I've learned through time, and especially from foundation that I've learned, is like just go for it. Just do something, you wouldn't expect doing, because you're going to learn from it. And then you can apply those things into the work that you do now that maybe, what a client would expect, but because you've been able to adapt, you can, bring it on.
I guess it comes without saying that you're sort of always looking on places like Instagram and things, and you're always looking at other artists as inspiration as well. And I guess that drives that feeling of making things that are different from, it's the same but different. You work in a style that is going to bring you clients, but you've got to still hit that level where people are going to want something different. So that's obviously the way that I guess you have to start thinking, isn't it? And that's the sort of thing. So leaving uni, you have a strong portfolio coming out, you have a website, but I know that within the last 12 months you've done a lot of work to that, and it's sort of, so how's the sort of journey been where you've come out and you know that you've got to strengthen yourself as a brand, you've got to get yourself out there, your work needs to be prominent, it needs to be seen. So what was the sort of first steps and the steps that you've taken up to this point that's made you get to where you are?
Okay, so to be fair, it's been very up and down, like this whole journey of becoming a freelancer and like figuring it out and stuff. The first step I did was to make a portfolio and like, really put my best work out there. And that was the first step. And then I think for a while I didn't really have a plan.
Mhm.
I was just creating work, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just keep adding that. But that's not, personally, I've found out for myself, like, that's really good in some way because you're always developing your craft, but you need to have like a plan and like a plan of action on what to
Mhm.
do. So now it's just been a thing of like trying to network and like understand where could my work be, who could want to see it, and it was also figuring out who would want to see it and like who would this cater towards. So that's the thing that I'm figuring out,
Mhm.
as well as in terms of like trying to build something for myself. That I want to like create prints, create t-shirts and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That's been again another journey of where just trying to grow as an artist and trying to push and challenge my work. I think I have the style, but also I want to be able to like create concepts with each of my like with my work, and alongside that, so I have I have myself, Nas.
Mhm.
Don't speak in third person, bloody hell. But also Prof,
Yeah.
the clothing that I would like
Yeah.
to start, and I really want to build that identity, keep evolving. So that's like it's like a double thing of you're growing as a person, evolving as a person,
Mhm.
but also a chance for me to express myself through illustration.
Mhm.
So just evolve as an illustrator and have like these opportunities to not opportunities you know communicate different types of styles and
Mhm.
stuff like that,
Mhm.
because I've also had like the graphic side,
Mhm.
the graphic design side, so that's a
Yeah, of
part of
course.
me that I feel like is really good, like and I want to keep developing. So that's where I want to integrate it within Prof, and that was like the main what is it called, avenue. That's why I created Prof in the first place.
Mhm.
It's like I knew that I had my illustration, and then I wanted Prof to be like a more graphic based style type
Yeah,
thing.
and you've obviously transferred the skills that you had in the 2 years at uni doing
Mm,
graphics, as much as maybe it wasn't catered to your strengths,
yeah.
when you were at that point. But you certainly took things, form, image, all these different things, color,
Hmm.
layout, everything, all these little things that you probably do subconsciously would go into
Yeah.
this Prof brand now. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, stylistically, you might see a difference there between maybe your illustrations that would go out to clients and would be a source of income for you there, but you also have, because we've spoken before about, you know, being a freelance illustrator, I can imagine is very up and down. So
Mm,
having a source of income, having a strong network, but also having a graft where you have a second form of income coming in from purely making things that people might want to buy, whether it be garms or
mm,
just prints, anything. And that sort of comes back to that idea that you brought up earlier, where when you're making yourself as a brand, because you are branding yourself as a freelancer, that you'd rather brand yourself to 100 people who you're catered to than
yeah.
10,000 people who are just anybody. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so then I guess that comes into play where you've got LinkedIn, you've got your Instagram, you've got Behance, you've got all these places where if you're submitting work, it's trying to hit that right circle of people that
Mm,
that will get a positive response, but also possible and potential clients there. Um,
mm,
which leads me on to the next point where we've had chats about this many times where what you see people on Instagram and people of influence who you follow or I follow or whoever, where they're landing these big deals with big clients. We see Nike. Nike is one that comes to my brain straight away,
yeah.
um, for these massive clients where illustrators get this opportunity. And is that from networking and building up? Is that from having a strong portfolio? Is it from being consistently high quality? It's probably all a number of those things, really. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No. There's that artist, Nasty Neckface, I was telling you about, and he's an artist, but like the stuff that he makes is wild. He's a
yeah.
wild boy. But yeah, and like, but he's had the opportunity to work with like Vans, Nike, and all of these things
Mhm.
just because he's been himself. He's been authentic with his style,
Mhm.
and that's like really. that's sick to see, especially for an illustrator that has their
Of
own
course.
identity. And there's like so many people that, and I feel like there's so many illustrators that cater to so many demographics of people,
Yeah.
to where these brands will see that and be like, okay, this hits this market, this hits that market. Oh yeah, let's, this looks sick. Do you know what I mean?
And of course, and I think the key thing is before you get to these, before these big clients actually notice your potential, I think it goes without saying that the networking is so vital in the creative industry, full stop. Whether you're an illustrator or a designer or whatever, and that comes back to you being a brand where no client is too small, really. You give them the same quality of service, because you are providing a service at the end of the day, where
Yeah.
you've got to hit a certain margin, and for every positive response and every positive feedback, the next client could see that. And that's where, as a freelancer, you've got to kind of, I guess you've got to think in that mindset where you have a plan, you have an end goal where who you would want to be working for, and you probably know who you'd want to cater to, but it's getting to that point before that. So it's definitely a journey, and it's one that you've just began, really.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point about, like, it doesn't matter like how big these clients are, like just be able to, like, bring a certain level of consistency and stuff like that, because it's only going to keep adapting. And also I think obviously understanding who you can cater for, but not be afraid to be like, okay, this is a bit more different, but let me see what I can do.
Yeah, because I think going back, because that's an interesting point, going back to your third year. What was the collaborative project? What was that for again? That was the
Woodland Heritage.
Woodland Heritage. I mean, so the brief. I mean, you can disagree. Obviously, I don't know how you would have responded to it, but looking at it, I think you would have looked at it and probably been like, would this have been something that if I'd had 10 briefs in front of me, I probably wouldn't have chosen this one. But because the client has come into UCA and asked for it, that's when you have to sort of think in a way where I'm like, right, so if this has come to me, it's good practice, isn't it? Where, if you're a freelancer and someone does approach you and you're wondering, oh, this is slightly different to what I didn't anticipate to be working on. But yeah, I think that's a good point where, if you're developing that and you're confident in your ability, then that's where you can say, I can probably hit the nail on this.
Yeah. And yeah, like I remember what was that? The not Costa, Nescaf.
The
Like
Nescafe, yeah.
there's, I think at the end of the day, like, although people are illustrators, there is that thing of through time you just build other stuff that you're like, okay, I may not be the strongest at this, but let me do my best and keep perfecting this thing, because I have an idea for this brand and they've come to me. And if I talk to them and say, I have this idea, I still have my essence to it, let me just go for it. And that could be something, that's where you've just pushed your boundaries a bit more and people are going to admire that.
Well, and you obviously take it into your eventual career, don't you, with that mindset?
Yeah.
Because I mean, Nescafe was a interesting one for me personally as well, where I think it's a good point where when people, when these clients come in, and although it's at uni and you're guided a lot, you put in some work which you might look at it and go, I'm happy stylistically with the way I've done it, because it's the way that you've decided as a creative to do that. And often, the client might not be after that specifically.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important lesson which I took, and I'm sure a number of people took from Nescafe, from Woodland Heritage, from all these projects where it's possible for us to get the wrong end of the stick as well. I think and that's an important lesson where you might think this is perfect for me. This is going to be exactly what they want, but you find actually no, it's not quite right. And I think as a freelancer, I can imagine that when clients come to you and you give them the first draft, and it might not be what they're after, it's not being disheartened, is it? It's taking that on the chin and kind of going, right, so how am I going to take this back a notch and problem solve? Because I think that's a very key thing. Do you follow trends? Do you follow trends in the illustration industry? Is there anything that you've picked up in the last year since being in lockdown that you've found interesting at all?
I wouldn't say I follow trends. I think I like a lot of illustrators' work.
Mhm.
Um, there's stuff that I see that I'm like, oh, that's wavy. I rate that.
Specifically, like any sort of like styles or anything, or is it similar to your style? Is it different from your style?
I think, do you know when people make characters and then they play with the proportions and stuff, and then
Mhm.
they make them like stylish and stuff like that. I love that. And then as well as, do you know when people make like landscapes with like that certain angle of illustration? I love that type of style.
Sure.
Um, these are all things that I would like to do, but I'd also want to like bring my own, thing to it, and what makes it a bit more individual to me, the
Mhm.
same way they've done their way of doing things. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's
Yeah.
something that I need to like always want. I want to practice more, but like for now, I think I've just been learning about my own stuff that I enjoy drawing and creating. So that's kind of where I want to cater towards.
So hopefully, if this podcast blows up and I get loads of people on here and it's very popular and people are like, "This is insane," I want to bring you back in a,
Yeah.
in a year's time, let's say, or like in a few months' time when just to sort of look this back and be like, "Oh, so you said this at this point."
Mm.
Um,
I just disagree with everything that I
and
say.
just say how, oh well, I wish I'd done that. But no, no. So so have you got anything that you're sitting here thinking, oh, so in a year's time, it'd be great if I could develop this into the thing that I'm doing, or because a big thing in uni I felt was that a lot of tutors were going to you being like, oh, it'd be these are great. Can you make them move? Or
Yeah.
chuck it into an animation and try and make a story. So is there something in the back of your mind where you'll have where you are now? Is there things that you want to develop, or is there things that you're hoping to have if I was to talk to you in a year's time?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think they always have like pipeline dreams and like goals that I want to make for myself. I know that within this year, I need to create something for myself, build a business and
Of course.
identity,
Yeah.
and like with clothing, and then with that, hopefully get consistent work with clients and like be able to build, hopefully, and I think working in a bigger scale. I think I've recently been thinking about making paintings
Mhm.
and like
Okay.
have that thing of where I have my own style that I've been working on, and then just paint and stuff. And then also, this like a long-term goal, but like murals and stuff like that. That's I
Yeah.
love graffiti and stuff like that, and so that would be like a dream of mine.
No, perfect. I
So
mean,
hopefully in a
yeah.
year's time, I'll be like, yeah, no, this is gonna be in a month's time.
No, but again, in a year's time, stylistically, I'm sure you wouldn't have changed much, but let's hope that you're
Oh
getting
no,
a
no.
lot of.
Hopefully I do. Like to be fair, I think the levels of where I want to take my work improves.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main thing. I think people with illustration styles, I think is like how can I apply this, and how can this get taken to the next level, and how can this be seen and in a different type of context, different type of meaning. I think that's like really important for an illustrator with a style, well, especially for me.
That's pretty much all my questions.
Mm.
Mate, I appreciate you being the first person on here.
Well, I can't lie, this has been actually very nerve-wracking. I think we can openly speak now. Yeah, like
Yeah,
this is like completely different type of way of doing it, but like in terms of me speaking about my work, and it's just like, damn.
do you know what it is? Because I think that was the drive of this whole project, is that I wanted to kind of put people in a position where, it might be the first time they've spoken to someone in a sort of formal way about what they
Mm,
do and what they want to do and things like this. And
yeah,
it's it's been a great, this has been a great first example, really. I think it's good to sort of see how you think, and looking back, and obviously I've known you for 4 years now.
yeah.
and seeing your development from my perspective has been interesting, but hearing it back from where you've been sitting, it's been quite interesting. So
Mm.
hopefully, if the rest of the episodes hit this level, then I'll be very pleased with the developments.
How was how was it interviewing?
This is very different for me, man.
Mate, you done good though. Like I feel like you was able to transition and like be able to like keep it a good flow.
That's it. It's just keeping the silences to a minimum, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But no, it's just hoping that I'm trying to guide certain conversations so it's interesting for people to listen to. That's literally that's why I'm here. Otherwise I'll just have you on your own, just talking to a camera, and I'll just edit it. Like that's the reason why I'm here. I'm just here to try and guide it. But, no, mate, you've been brilliant. So this is better than I could have imagined that it was going to go for the first time. So no, thank you again, mate. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
We're there. We've done first podcast. Bloody hell.